Hello everybody. So first of all, if you're watching this on the day that I'm uploading it, I want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. As you can see, I'm wearing a Christmas jumper, so I'm all ready for the occasion. I hope you're all having a very lovely day and enjoying it the best you can under the circumstances. Nevertheless, I also have a film to review, so today I'll be reviewing this film, which is Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. So Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, this is a film which came out in 1936 and was directed by Frank Capra. So this film is about a character called Longfellow Deeds, and he's played by Gary Cooper. And his uncle unfortunately dies, leaving him an inheritance of $20 million. And at first, Mr. Deeds, he doesn't really know how to react to this. He doesn't really know what to make of it, because he's from a small town called Mandrake Falls in Vermont, and he doesn't really know what to do with all this money. He's quite happy with his life exactly the way it is. So what happens is that these attorneys, they come to him, they tell him the news about the inheritance, and they take him away to New York City so that he can claim the inheritance himself. And this is a big story, you know, the story of this man from a small town inheriting this large amount of money. It becomes big news. It becomes news, and it's shown all over the newspapers, and it's a really big story, and everybody knows about it. So when Mr. Deeds, he goes to New York City, he finds that everybody wants to know about him, and some people are almost trying to take advantage of him a bit and try and, you know, want to get some of his money. We're then introduced to Jean Arthur's character, and in this film, Jean Arthur, she plays a newspaper reporter, and she is basically tasked with finding out more about Mr. Deeds and getting all the latest gossip on him and finding out all the details. So what she does, she pretends to be somebody else. So she waits outside Mr. Deeds' house, and then she pretends to faint on the floor. Mr. Deeds helps her, and then the two of them end up becoming quite close, and as such, Jean Arthur manages to find a lot more about Mr. Deeds and find out more about his past, about what he likes to do, and then she runs back to her newspaper job and essentially deals out all the gossip and all the details to the boss, and then she writes a column in the paper which essentially makes Mr. Deeds look out to be a complete fool, make him look like a complete idiot. Yeah, and poor old Mr. Deeds, he hears about all these things in the papers about this writer calling him names and making him out to be an idiot, but he doesn't realise that it's actually Jean Arthur who's writing about him. Now, as I said, this film was directed by Frank Capra, and this is the fourth film, I believe, that I've seen which has been directed by Frank Capra. So I've also seen It Happened One Night, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and then later on It's a Wonderful Life, which is arguably his best known film. And yeah, Frank Capra as a director, he is known for doing these sorts of films. His film has a really Frank Capra-esque feel to it. You can certainly tell it's a Frank Capra film. It feels particularly similar to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, especially with this character from, you know, who's obviously from a smaller town, going to a big city, going into a new environment and essentially finding out that, you know, things in a big city are very different to back home. And he has trouble adjusting because, well, in some ways, Mr. Deeds, played brilliantly by Gary Cooper, he's a little bit like Forrest Gump, and that he's quite a simple character, not necessarily stupid, but he sees things in quite a simple way, and is, you know, a very nice guy. He sees good in people, and he doesn't really seem to have a particularly bad side to him. He wants to help people, and he sees good in the world. And then when he goes to this big city where lots of people are, you know, making fun of him, he doesn't quite understand it, and he doesn't seem to fit in with that side of the world. Now, Gary Cooper, as an actor, before watching this, I'd only seen him in one film before, which was High Noon, which is Western, and that film is really different to this, obviously. And yeah, Gary Cooper in this film, he's much younger, and he plays a really different type of character. He's a very likeable character in this film, very likeable protagonist. And yeah, I think when I was watching it, you do feel a little bit sorry for him, although obviously he's inheriting all this money. His life is turned upside down, and yeah, his life really becomes a mess once he inherits all this money. Must also mention Jean Arthur as well gives a terrific performance, starting off perhaps not being a very likeable character, but yeah, her character has a proper arc in this film is that when she meets Mr. Deeds, first of all she sees him as being this really stupid guy who doesn't know how to behave and doesn't know what to do with this money. Yeah, just ends up giving money away to people without thinking about it. But then eventually she realised that Mr. Deeds brings out a different side to Jean Arthur's character, and she learns to see things differently. And yeah, so her character really does change throughout the film in a positive way. Now, in a lot of ways, this film, a bit like It's a Wonderful Life, could be perhaps accused of being a bit too overly sentimental. I think it does tend to be like that with a lot of Frank Capra's films. He does tend to want to give nice warm messages, but perhaps in an overly simplistic way, and perhaps in a way that, you know, Mr. Deeds has all this money and simply wants to hand it out to people and help people. Perhaps that approach is a bit too simple, and you know, it's not always that easy in the real world. It's not always the way things work. There are other, you know, circumstances to take into account. But you do have to remember that this film came out in the 1930s during the Depression, and it was obviously a very hard time for lots of people in America. The economy was terrible. Lots of people were losing their jobs, and going to see this at a theatre in 1936 with this uplifting message about this rich man who wants to help other people, it's going to be something that would have appealed to a lot of people. And yeah, it's probably why the film is such a classic, because it really is a timeless story. And yeah, it fits in with this time period of the 1930s. I think it is one of those films that does have a really nice message, and it certainly does have a message about sharing the wealth. I don't think it's too preachy in the way it does it. It isn't one of those films that tries to tell us how to behave. It's more just about thinking about these characters and following the story. There are some people that could say that this film has a slight left-leaning perspective with perhaps an anti-capitalist theme, but I think perhaps maybe that's looking into it a bit too deeply. I mean, I understand there is a big contrast in this film between the rich people and the poor people, especially with Mr. Deeds coming from a small town and going to a larger area. It's a real character-driven film. We like this Mr. Deeds character. He is the protagonist. He is the one that we want to root for. So wrapping up, overall, this was a film I really enjoyed. It's a very simple story, but it's a story that we can enjoy today as well. And it is worth mentioning there was a remake of this, which was just called Deeds, which came out in 2002, starring Adam Sandler and Winona Ryder. And I actually saw that film quite a while ago, but it wasn't particularly memorable, and I don't think it was as good as this. It certainly hasn't had a reputation as going down as a classic. But yeah, no, nevertheless, this is an excellent movie, real feel-good film, and an excellent one to sort of watch with a family as well. It's quite a family-friendly sort of film with a really heartwarming message, and yes, great acting from both Gary Cooper and Jean Arthur. So overall, I'm going to give Mr. Deeds Goes to Town a rating of 8 out of 10. Definitely check this one out if you're a fan of Frank Capra's movies and you like films with a nice, inspiring, warm message. So there we go. So that is my review of Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. So what do you guys think? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Or have you seen it, rather? Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Take care.